On this episode of Around the Outside, the hosts and producer of Gravel Trap F1 podcast are in the studio. Kick back, relax, and enjoy the show.
You're listening to Around the Outside, the American Formula One podcast with your hosts Ian Shea and Mike DuPont.
Yeah. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Around the Outside, the American Formula One podcast. We have a very special episode for you today because we have Caroline and Christina in the studio, the hosts of Gravel Trap F1, and you're going to have a guest appearance by Buck, the producer of Gravel Trap F1. Guys, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Good to be here.
Very happy to be here.
I'm very excited that you guys are able to make it into the studio. I have to admit, my girlfriend is the reason why I found out about you two because of the Pit Lane Twins, the two women that released the book, and
Desiree and Virginia. She
listened to it and said, "Ian, you gotta check them out. See if you can't get them on the show." So this is awesome that it's working out.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're thrilled to be here. Desiree and Virginia, they're excellent. They were so fun to work with. So,
yeah. And that's an extremely smart idea to write an ebook for first timers coming into Formula One to try and walk around a track because there seems to be a million things that you can do. From what I gather.
True.
Oh. Mm-hmm. So you guys are a recent. I don't mean to cut you off. Sorry, but you guys are a recent Formula One podcast, and I want to ask how has your journey been so far? How did you guys come together and decide we're doing a Formula One podcast?
Well, that comes down to Buck. He kind of just emailed us and said, hey, I've got an idea here. That is not what Buck sounds like, just for reference, but that is...
He just like side shuffled tap version into our DMs.
Exactly. And was just like, I have this idea, and would you be interested in having a chat about it? So we both individually had chats with Buck about it, and then Caroline and I had a chat and just did a chemistry test, essentially, of would this work? Would this be a great grand old idea? Chemistry test went off absolutely fantastic.
It was completely useless. We were like, let's just start recording right now. Let's just start recording right now.
Yeah. And then it's just been like 2 months at this point now of working together. I was looking at my calendar earlier and I saw the like little test pod in my calendar and was just like, aw. Anniversary.
In the way back. Yeah. When Buck reached out to me, it's funny because most of my work that I do is in podcasting. I'm an audio engineer by day, F1 fan 24/7. And so I work with a lot of podcasts. And so when Buck reached out to me, I've been considering doing a podcast and I didn't want to have to do it all by myself. And so it was so serendipitous when Buck messaged me and I was like, who is this random man in California? And then we met over Zoom and I was like, wow, he's going to do the hard stuff. This is great. And so Christina and I can do the fun stuff.
So the two of you haven't met before the podcast. Is that my understanding? What?
We'd seen each other's videos occasionally on TikTok.
Yeah.
So the awareness of just we exist was there, but yeah, no, we're getting to meet in person actually in less than a month.
Woohoo!
You guys haven't even met in person yet, and you're doing this well?
No. No, we're not even in the same country. Christina's in Canada, and I'm in America. Okay. And so we're meeting up in Miami, and we're just going to live it up at the Miami Grand Prix together. I'm so excited.
Did you get bummed when you saw that the track was flooded today?
I did, yes.
I'm so mad.
Are you guys nervous that the race is going to get canceled?
It better not. I will
feel
go.
like they're gonna have bigger problems than me if it gets canceled. They're gonna have way bigger problems than me being upset.
Like, I will go. I will do buckets and sandbagging if I have to make it happen. Like, fly out the week early. You need to volunteer for this to happen. Like,
I'm there.
I'm there.
Yes.
And how did you guys get involved individually into Formula One? Because I was listening, you don't have to recap your first episode. I listened to it, but for our listeners, just, what's that, Quick Notes version of it?
Yeah. I love Christina's story. I'm going to have her go first.
I was on a date with a man whose name I cannot recall at this point. And we were doing the classic exchange of this interests me, this interests you. And his interest of that conversation was Formula One. So he talked about it a little bit. I was like, okay, cool, that's interesting. And then I went home. And for the next week or something, the internet kept suggesting I watch Formula One. YouTube, videos, Twitter, conversations. Hey, Instagram, do you want to follow these people? It just kept popping up everywhere on streaming services. Do you want to watch these documentaries? So eventually I relented. I went and I watched a couple race recaps. I started watching full race replays that I could find, and then deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm still here.
Wow.
And she knows everything. I mean, I swear,
Well.
Christina will read the regulations for her like light night reading. She's just like flipping through the regs.
Good for you.
That's what she does.
I'm
Yeah.
like a newborn with the heads. That's how I get when it comes to regulations. About 2 minutes into someone explain it to me. Even the tech, I love the tech of Formula One to a point. Like I can't intake all that information. So good for you for being able to have the brain to do that.
Yeah.
It was a process. I read it, I think, over the course of 3 weeks over the winter break. And it was set schedule of how many pages I was going to push through per day. But I did it. I have it all highlighted and like annotated. And then they released a new version. And now I'm like, well, never mind.
Nope, we got to start over.
Caroline,
This thing keeps changing.
hey, Caroline, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm married and my husband is Italian. So that's the only intro that I need.
Yes.
He is a massive, massive Ferrari fan. And I'm pretty sure it was probably somewhere in our marriage agreement that I had to be a Ferrari fan post Nupitals. But no, truly, we love all the teams. Everybody's a Ferrari fan, so it's safe to say. But yeah, he actually kind of Pavloved me into Formula One because I resisted at first.
Okay.
You know how when someone tells you to like something, you're like, now I'm not going to like it because you told me I'm not going to like it.
Yes. Yep.
So he kind of Pavloved me into it. He would have Drive to Survive on in our house on like all the screens all day long. And at first I resisted. And then Danny Rick's smile just pulled me in.
It has a way to brighten up your day.
It does. And so I had to learn about it all. And it's funny because now I'm sort of a DTS fan and I love DTS fans. They're incredible. But I feel like I'm like a half breed. Like I'm a half DTS fan, but also half classic fan, if that's even a term.
No, that makes sense. Well, Drive to Survive does something that the regular racing doesn't, and it gives you the full story, the full insight into what happens in a Grand Prix and what stressors the drivers are under and the conversations we never get to hear, but somehow Netflix does get to hear them. And I think that was the Drive to Survive fans are awesome because they've gotten a deeper insight to the three of us who have watched many races and went, oh, I had to wait 10 years to hear that one fucking sentence, but Drive to Survive picked it up in no time. So no, that's really cool that Formula One was something that you married into, and it's like definitely like a family. That's awesome to hear. And for each one of you, what is it about Formula One that keeps you coming back to the sport? Because I can watch, one game of golf, but then I won't care for 3 years.
For me, Formula One, the fact that it's a constructors championship.
Oh.
That every single race is different. Every single car is different. I mean, every single race is different too, but the fact that all the cars are different, that they're all trying something, and love seeing all of the different angles you can get to the cars and the aerodynamics. Those tech discussions really give me life. absolutely love those. Like that is my favorite part about Formula One. I do really I enjoy yelling at my screen at 4 a.m. as well. I really enjoy getting just super amped up. And my poor friend, when we were watching the Australian Grand Prix, she was staying over and being like my emotional support. She supports me supporting Formula One, but she herself doesn't watch. So she's like on her phone as I'm freaking out at this. She fell asleep during one of the red flags because she thought it was done, kind of a thing.
Yep.
But I was like yelling and screaming at the television, and she was just sleeping through the whole thing. It was great. But yeah, it's awesome. Good.
Yeah, for me, and this is why Christina and I get along so well, because she's so knowledgeable about the technical aspect and loves that element. And I feel like I love the human element of Formula One. And my mantra when it comes to the sport is there's something for everybody in Formula One. If you like technicality and engineering, it's there. If you like team dynamics, it's there. If you like drama, it's there. If you like, I don't know, good strategy, it's there. Anybody that's a sport fan can find something to love in Formula One. But for me, what brings me back is the human element. I love the dynasties, how you'll see a Schumacher and then another Schumacher, or you'll see a Senna and you'll see a Massa. And I love the relationships that everybody forms and with their race engineers and even within each of the teams. And when you have drivers go to a new team, and everybody really does seem to root for each other, but also root for themselves. Like they understand where the line is and they're respectful of it. And I love that.
That's what's funny about this sport, is because everybody is, I think there's a change coming into the sport where you're wanting to see teammates be friends. And back in the day, they're not friends. These people who are driving these cars are the most competitive, 20 of the most competitive individuals, I would say, in the world. And the way that everyone's being portrayed makes a wonderful story. And at the same time, it makes you think, do people really get along like Checo and Verstappen? So my first question to you is, Christina, with the package that Red Bull has, who do you think the team is going to favor, even though they're saying they don't favor?
They're going to favor Verstappen. Yeah. Like it's kind of a no-brainer, unless by some like horrible twist of fate, he completely DNFs multiple races, unless he has a streak of bad luck and they have to back Checo. They're backing Verstappen. Like, he performs in a way that no other driver does currently. He pulls more out of that car than Checo does. And additionally, as much as they don't say the car is designed around him, he's been at the team for close to 10 years now. Yeah. He has been giving feedback on the design of that car. There is no separating him from the design of that car in the same way that there is from Checo. Checo, yes, he's been with the car for 3 years. He's been giving input, but the foundation is there for it to be based around Max's opinions. They're two trees that have intertwined themselves. There's no separation between Red Bull, the car, and Verstappen at this point.
That's a strong visual, too, because Max Verstappen and Red Bull are intermingled. They're the same, one and the same now. You can't speak Red Bull without speaking Max. And Caroline, what do you think that's doing to Checo and his mental state for this season? Because he's looking very, very strong. And at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, he seemed like a prime challenger to Max. How do you think he's going to handle this season mentally?
I definitely think he kind of straddles the line of wanting to be a good teammate and work for the team while also fighting for himself. Yeah. I mean, he's a racer. He's a racer. He wants to win. And so I'm sure that there are conversations happening behind closed doors that we don't have access to, where he is petitioning for himself. I want to see him succeeding. I want to see him fighting for wins. I think that Red Bull have set up the car really, really well for Max, to accommodate Max. So there is a little bit of an uphill battle in that for Checo, but I think he is really happy to take on the challenge. And I don't know, I want to see him take it to him. And I don't have anything against Max. I think Max is great, but I also think Max has already won. How cool would it be for Checo to win? And then the team, that's actually, in my opinion, better for the team. If they can boast that they've had both of their drivers win the Drivers' Championship over the course of their time in peak power, you know?
Oh, I do. And I agree too, because that's a very rare thing. I think 2016 is the only time I can remember where another teammate from the same constructor, the constructor said, hey, we're dominant. It's not the driver, it's us. And I think that puts a flag in the paddock of saying, you can't touch us now. We're top dog. Come and get us. And
yeah, Nico Rosberg would never let us forget it.
No, and I love Nico, and his 2016 drive was absolutely phenomenal. It's a shame that he didn't continue on in the sport, because I think he could have been taking it to Lewis the whole time, the whole entire time. And
I'm so sorry, guys. I have to plug in my laptop. It's about to die. I don't want us to lose this. Keep going.
Okay, we will. So, Christina, you talked about your love for tech, and the innovations that come in this sport are amazing. And I'm bringing up the double diffuser for Ross Brawn in 2009. And this evolution of car is just another example of what the race engineers can do. Where do you think, or how do you think this evolution of vehicle is going to pan out over the next coming 3 years? Because when I first started watching the ground effect cars, I was nervous that things are going to be slower, but they're not. What do you think?
Oh,
yeah.
This is one this is something I actually haven't thought too deeply about, just because we're going into year 2 where we're really we're still seeing teams essentially trying to get a handle on ground effects. Like, that's, as much as we are seeing better racing, I'm personally getting a little frustrated that we're seeing so many teams that are essentially trying to fix problems instead of bringing upgrades. They're trying to figure out what the heck is going on with their car and not actually developing and improving their cars. So as much as, yes, we are having a lot closer vehicles, they're also not competitive in the same way. I'm thinking back to Saudi Arabia this year, where it kind of felt like so many of the cars were just driving along on their own. And yes, Australia was fantastic and it was a good comeback, but my big fear is more so that teams aren't going to get a good handle on a baseline of, yes, our cars are functioning the way we want them to now, and we can move forward. That's kind of my big fear with ground effects at this point.
And I think it was very insightful for you to say that teams are bringing upgrades to fix the car. I appreciate the distinction that you made between fixing and performance. This is why that's like questions and insights like that are exactly why I'm happy to have you both here on this podcast, because it's something that I have never thought of to speak about. So thank you for sharing that. That was awesome. And
absolutely.
Caroline.
Christina's the best person to talk about that kind of stuff, I swear. If you would ask me that question, I would be like, I don't know.
Well, teams that do need to bring upgrades is everybody, but the biggest team that's bringing the biggest upgrade and making it sound like a new car is Mercedes. Caroline, I've been hearing Total Wolff talking about that there's a new package coming for Imola, and it's going to be completely different. But from what we've seen and the performance gained over three races, do you 100% believe Total Wolff?
I think that I can't have an unbiased answer to this question, because I really like Toto Wolff. I really respect him as a businessman and the decisions that he makes and the way he has led his team. I don't think any of the principals tell the full truth all the time. So I feel like it's not totally fair to just single out Toto. Do I think he's telling the whole truth? Maybe, maybe not. But none of them ever are, because I mean, it's the famous line from Drive to Survive, the most recent season, where he's like trying to ask Christian, tell me what you did with your car. And he's like, if you have a problem with your car, change your car. And they don't want to share those trade secrets. When you've unlocked something in your car, of course you don't want to tell everybody, because then everybody else is going to do it. So I think Mercedes strives for excellence. I think that they want to be number one. So I think that it's hard to say. I think that, yes, they probably have things coming in Imola, but I also think that they're working day and night and day to get things fixed now. And I don't think they want to wait that long.
That's very true. And the way they're talking is that it seems like I don't know if it's going to be honestly a completely redesigned car. Christina, with the cost cap regulations coming in and the massive amount of work that needs to be done on Mercedes, do you think we're going to, even if they are bringing a new concept of car, will it be fully developed for this season?
I don't think so. Mercedes have spent all of last year essentially saying, we have a fix. It's going to be fine. We're going to be back at top performance. Coming into this season, they were saying that exact same thing. And then all of a sudden it all crumbled. And you were hearing different things from Toto, from George, from Lewis, from their chief engineer, whose name I should remember, but I don't. And the fact is, I'm not going to believe that they have a solution until I see it repeatedly. Yes, they had a good performance in Australia. That was fantastic. Good for them. But their engine also failed. And at
only
the end
12
of the day,
drivers finished. So
it's at the end of the day, they have, I don't even know if they know how many problems they have at this point, because it sounds so discombobulated as far as their responses to all these questions of where are you at? Are you happy with this? No, you're not. Okay, well, I don't think they even know what's going on.
No, and I agree with that too, because when Lewis was talking about how his driving position was causing an issue in the car, to me, that seems like you're reaching for almost anything to get some explanation, to get some comfort of driving that vehicle to the limit that they know that they can. And the relationship between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, we have to give credit to George because he beat Lewis last year and he was beating him in the Australian Grand Prix. Either one of you, do you think that relationship is going to blossom or sour?
I think that they both have considerate enough respect for each other that, like, I don't think we're looking at a Nico Rosberg, Lewis Hamilton rebirth. I don't think that, but I also don't think that we're looking at a Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton rebirth. I think it's its own different new thing. I think George is racing for George, and I think Lewis is racing for Lewis. I think they both know that about each other, and they don't expect favors from each other. And I actually think that's the healthiest thing for the team going into it with George being relatively new, to know that George is not going to be helping his teammate. It allows Lewis the freedom to not expect it and to drive for Lewis, and for George not to expect it from Lewis and to drive for George. And I actually think it's created a very respectful working relationship between the two of them.
And I think it's going to stay that way until George has had enough. Until it's like, Lewis, it's time for you to retire. It's time for you to go. It's time for me to be Mercedes number one. If Lewis stays years and years and years on, if he pulls a Fernando Alonso and just never retires, that's where I think that there's going to be conflict. Like, realistically, George will be patient to a point, is my prediction.
No, George has been wanting, I mean, everybody wants a world championship, but the kid drove it horrible Williams for a lot of years. Yeah. And their development for this season has been shocking, unexpected.
Yeah.
With Jost Capito gone, I'm going to ask you guys, do you think that their development will continue? Because this season's car is thanks to the direction of Jost last season, with James Vowles at the helm, who is an incredible leader. We all know that he's tested in race wins and making the tough calls. Will he have the development excellence that Jost did?
I think so. Yeah.
The general thing that I heard as well about Capito leaving was that it was, one, because he was ready to retire. He had signed on to do 2 or 3 years at most. So even though it seems kind of like a shock retirement, it seems like behind, at least this is the public statement he made about it, that behind closed doors, no, this was always the understanding, that he would be there for a short time to set up a good foundation for the team, and he's gone and done that. The other thing I've heard, though, is they weren't happy with how he was getting team dynamics to work. So they weren't happy with there was still that large divide between the traveling team and the factory team, which is one of the things that James Vowles right now is aggressively tackling. He's sending, I think it is daily emails wherever he is to the rest of the team.
Wow.
Of just writing them himself, little feedback. It might not be every day. I might be exaggerating that. But on race weekends, I do think it's very regular of just trying to get that whole team, changing the culture around it. So that seems to be their priority right now, as much as, their car is good. And yes, they did get rid of some of those top leadership people, but the rest of the team is still there. I haven't heard of any other massive changes. So I'm going to assume that the ball is just going to keep on rolling. But who knows? Like it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it seemed to be a very natural transition from Jos into James. And James seems very well equipped for the position. And I definitely think we're going to see some further development in the Williams going forward. Alex Albon is an incredible driver.
Yeah, he is.
That's
so good.
Just like leaking every possible bit of potential out of that car, which is the best thing that you can ask for from a development standpoint. You've got to see how far you can take it to know where the line is and see how much further you can push it. And so they have a great driver lineup to further their development. And I think that they now have the morale behind them to just put the wind in the sails. And I want to see him fighting for the front. I know that's like many years away, but I want to see it.
Oh, no, Williams is first in my heart always. They're such a storied team in Formula One, and having them relegated to the back of the grid since 2017, 18, it seems like, has been heartbreaking to watch. And what I like about the advancement of Williams is that the regulations that we have in place now to bring the field competitive is working. Christina, what wind tunnel allowance does the P20 or P10, in the constructors have in difference to P1? I'm not sure. I 100% don't know that.
Oh, I don't know it, but I have the regulations right here on my.
I told
desktop.
you, she loves it.
I could actually pull it up, and we could find out, because I think it's like 7th or 6th spot that has the 100%. So I think these guys are getting like one. No, wait, it's all the way at the end, isn't it?
An over 100%. It's something outrageously different.
It's like up in the 120 or 130s, I want to say. My search engine is not working very well for this. Oh, is that it?
Look at that. Oh, that's Buck's screen.
I was going to say, is this Buck? Hey, Buck.
Buck has found it. There it is.
Thank you, Buck.
See, this is what we mean. This is why we have a Buck.
Everybody needs a Buck.
You're welcome.
But, okay, so it's 150. Not as outrageous as I thought it was. I thought it was like crazy high. But yeah, they have like a fair bit more time. But here's one thing that I would actually prefer, and if I could change something in the regulations, this would be one of them.
Say it, girl.
I don't think it should be based off of your finishing position. I think it should be based off of your total points.
Yes, ma'am.
And how many points difference are between the teams, because Red Bull dominating in that particular way, okay, it is what it is. But then you have Aston Martin, I think, and Alfa Romeo last year, who they were tied on points, but then went to count back. So then all of a sudden they have a 5% difference in time, even though they got the same number of points.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very interesting take on what to do for awarding people at the end of the season. So for the sprint weekend, guys, I've never liked the sprint weekend just because it has the sprint race has points involved into the overall championship. If you guys are fans, let me know. If you're not, do you have any other suggestions of what Formula One can do to take the points out of the sprint race weekend? And I bring taking out the points because I find that when you have a top team who has more of a chance to take more points, you're going to have a bigger gap at the end, and people are going to complain that the sport isn't competitive. What's another option, do you think?
I would be a hardcore fan of Formula One doing duels the way Formula E does.
Explain that, please.
And have it to be... So Formula E, their qualifying is a dual format. They have 2 heats at the start, and the top 4 from each of those heats moves on to the dual stage. And then they each get a single fast lap against their competitor. Whoever from that round sets the fastest lap moves on to the next. So it's really high intensity. If you screw up even minorly, you're done. And you get one chance for a hot lap. It's so thrilling, so like it is the best part of Formula E, quite frankly. And I wish more series did qualifying or just performances like that. Not performances, competitions like that, where it's you get one shot, one opportunity.
Like a head-to-head
One
competition.
chance to seize everything you ever dreamed.
There
I was waiting.
I didn't know if I should say mom spaghetti or anything like that.
Nah, that's how we roll. References.
Caroline, are you a fan?
Yeah.
Are you a fan of sprint weekends?
I like the sprint weekends, but it's purely because I feel like sprint races are the races of second chances. Like if you don't do well in the qualifier, because mistakes happen in the qualifier, it happens. And I don't like to see a mistake happen in qualifying that ruins someone's opportunity in the race. And so I love the second chances that sprint races provide. I know that sprint race weekends are a lot harder on the teams. And so I believe in any time they're trying to make these kinds of changes, they need to take into consideration the strain that it puts on the teams because they're already doing so much every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I like the sprint races. I feel like maybe for the sake of the championship, they could make them not, point award moments.
Yep.
Maybe take away the part where they get points for it. But Brazil was it 2 years ago with Lewis Hamilton in Brazil will live on in my heart forever. That sprint race was incredible. It was just incredible.
That was the best drive I think I've ever seen someone do for an entire weekend, not just the course of a part of a race or one race, an entire weekend. And I don't want to go back in time because I could talk about that sprint race for 3 more hours, but we all have lives to get to, I swear. Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll in that Aston Martin, when we were in preseason testing, I didn't think anything that people were saying was valid or they had anything to it because it's testing. Who's going to really...
None of us did. Yeah.
Do you think this team has the sustainability in machinery and people to continue on this course of looking like they could be fighting for P2 in this year's championship?
Yes, 100% yes. The biggest thing isn't their performances that they're putting out. It's hearing about all of the planning that's gone into making this team successful. I was reading an article about their new campus that they're opening, and they were talking about how they wanted to be open concept for the flow of ideas and team building. And they were saying all of the things that would set them up for success because they would have a team that worked well together, that were able to tackle problems. And that's where I have the most confidence in them. They've clearly put a lot of thought and effort into bringing the right people together, into bringing the right car together. And when you have that good foundation that is going to be able to tackle problems, I will be shocked if they do not finish second or challenge Red Bull for, a handful of races.
Oh, yeah. Fernando's win is coming. And I mean, I know we were talking previously about Toto and whether or not principals always tell the truth. And I know that Lawrence Stroll is not the principal. However, I will say Lawrence Stroll is not everybody's favorite person, but the man means what he says. And when he says something, he means it. And I feel like I can put money on the fact that when he says we're going to be competing in the front in 5 years, I'm like, you know what? He has the track record of success in all the other areas of his life. But I would honestly believe him when he says that. So it doesn't surprise me that they're doing well. I do have a follow-up question.
Okay.
That's off script. My husband has this kind of, I don't want to call it's a theory that he has that Lance Stroll will be seatless in Aston Martin soon because the car is doing so well. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that he's got that seat security because his dad owns the team, or that they're going to want to put someone with the numbers behind them, like a Charles Leclerc or like an Oscar Piastri or like one of these, really talented, not that I'm saying Lance isn't talented, but like really talented hotshot front running drivers?
I want them to be willing to do that. Like, Lance is an absolute solid driver. Good for him. Canadian. Kind of left his...
Buck is like, put Daniel Ricciardo in that car.
he would look good in the green. I mean, who wouldn't? That is a stellar green. But I do think if they have a hope of really challenging the Red Bull team, for the constructors at the very least, they do have to have two drivers at that level of being right on Red Bull's heels. And Lance, I don't think he has that. So I think it might be a very awkward family dinner at some point. But until then, we wait and see. Like,
yeah,
that would be the spice of silly season.
It really would. Can you imagine? It would implode. Formula One would implode. You'd question everything at that point. If Lance Stroll loses the seat when the car is finally good, you question everything.
Yeah.
I don't think Lance could ever, not because his dad, that's obviously a shoo-in, but watching the progression of Lance from his rookie season to where he is now, the first couple of seasons, he was a silver spoon racer and it showed. But then when you saw his successes in the wet, he is a top 3 on the grid in the wet, in the greasy conditions. And he's just been able to adapt over time, and he hasn't hit a plateau yet. And it's incremental gains that he'll have to most likely increase if Aston Martin continues with this course of success that they're on, because when you're playing for P2, you're up against George Russell, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Charles, Carlos. They're all top tier drivers. And then you have those guys. And when you start playing at that level, when Fernando Alonso, the guy who took down Schumacher, is your teammate, and you've had Sebastian Vettel as your teammate as well, I also want to argue the fact that Lawrence is grooming his son. I think that Lawrence understands...
In a driving way, not in a creepy way. I need to just say that for the listeners.
Bringing in mentors.
Motorsport way.
And
clarifying.
And when you have that type of talent that's been backing you up, you need to deliver something. And Lawrence is a guy who wants results. You don't become a billionaire by saying, yeah, no, that's fine. That's good enough. That's a very 2025. If he doesn't do something 2025, I'll give him that long.
Yeah. The thing with Lance as well, and I feel like I need to watch more media of him, because this is a phrase that I feel like if you're Canadian, you get it. And if you're not, you don't. But Lance is so generically Canadian that I don't feel the need to watch a lot of interviews or content about him, because I'm just like, yeah, okay, I've talked to you like every other day of this week. Okay. Like you're just another Canadian dude. That's great. Cool. But so many indications give that, yes, he wants to be good, and yes, he wants to be competitive, but you don't necessarily see that sparkle and that special little shimmer that the champions have, or even that the front of the grid has. You don't see that little hunger behind the eyes of like, I'm going to drag this car across the finish line, come hell or high water. And to be clear, I am hell and high water. Like he just, he doesn't have that.
The grit.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's more so my thing is, I don't know how much effort, not necessarily effort, but he doesn't necessarily, I think, have the thing that you need to be right up at the front.
No, you're right. There is a certain X factor that world champions have. I reference most recently Alonso, after he got spun out on like the second red flag restart, he gets spun out, says the car's okay, and then goes directly into the rules and regs and tells the team we're going to be fine. And that's something that you need to pay attention for our first time listeners and viewers of Formula One. That's how you differentiate who's really got that grit, that X factor, because they're seeing more than just the wheel right now. And a person that I think is learning to see more than just the wheel is Zhou Guanyu. I've been hot on this kid for this season. The Alpha isn't showing his true pace, but what do you guys feel about Alpha and Zhou?
I think the car is disappointing.
Yeah.
It's had a mixed performance at best, which isn't what you want at this highly competitive level.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's such a skilled driver. Like I wish that they showed more of him on F1 TV.
Yep.
And I wish that he wasn't at Alfa Romeo, because Alfa Romeo is the team that I regularly forget exists.
It's the most forgettable. Like, truly, Alfa Romeo, most forgettable. Like, car. I mean, and I say that with love. And honestly, you know, a lot of people forget that Charles drove for them. And he's only on the map for a lot of people because Charles drove for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you see AlphaTauri, the sister team to Red Bull, and you think you associate them, right? And Alfa Romeo used to be the sister team to Ferrari, so you would think, let's associate them, but you just don't. You just don't. Sorry to slow your roll, Christina.
I don't even remember where I would have gone from there.
But yeah, I think Joe is an incredibly talented driver. I hope he gets a really great opportunity. Sometimes I wish I could just hear his thoughts, not at all related to racing, but just when he looks at Valtteri or talks to Valtteri Bottas, I want to know what Joe is thinking, because I feel like Valtteri has to be so out of pocket for him. Like, to be Valtteri Bottas' teammate right now has to be the most borderline psychedelic experience, because it's so random.
He's having a renaissance, and it's fantastic. Like, just shows up with mullet and mustache and
coffee and
else.
Like whatever his alcohol, gin, whatever his alcohol sponsorship. I was like, how can you show up with a depressant and like
accelerant,
caffeine? How can you show with both?
Because
that's why he's so fast.
He's Vabo. He doesn't fuck around. I love him, and he's honestly, as far as qualifiers go, he hasn't shown it because he hasn't had the performance, unfortunately, with Alpha. But he is, God, he made 101 Q3 appearances in a row, something outrageous like that. And I get nervous with Valtteri because he does come into a mid-season slump.
Yeah.
What do you think? And any driver too, because I'm going to bring up Kevin Magnussen in the same breath. He seems to be hitting a real preseason slump, or before, only 3 races in, because last year he was Haas's golden boy, and now Hulkenberg's on the team and kicking his ass. What do you guys think a driver does with themselves, with the team, to get out of a rut? Because
you just go back in a car.
Yeah.
And you drive whatever thing you can. Like, it's, I did competitive dance back in the day.
Okay.
And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to talk another time about it, because I did too. Oh my gosh, I can't wait.
No, it's a good time, but it's intense. It's a little crazy. And you have like little 5-year-olds basically being told, like, crush your competition.
Useless.
Exactly. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, one of the fundamental things I grew up on was, if you're not being critiqued, that means we think that you're like as good as you're ever going to get. And so you live for critique and you kind of live off of it. And it's
toxic.
Fantastic.
It's great.
It's a good cycle. It's healthy. That sounds very healthy for the progression.
It is. But from what I remember from that and how it would apply to being an international elite athlete, you kind of just, you have to forget everything that happened. And as much as I was told bad things growing up doing dance and it messed with the mentality, one of the useful things that I was always told was that this is one performance. It is one day, it is one time, and even the score you get, it is reflective of one person's opinion at this point in time, that 1 or 2, 3 judges. It's not the end all be all. And so as much as I do imagine that it's different for every single driver of how do you get back into that headspace? Do you just forget about it and leave? Do you ruminate on it and continue to be critical and fix the thing that is busted? Like, I'm sure it's different for every single driver, but it's also why they have trainers. It's also why they have all these people surrounding them to help them process all of that information and all of those emotions. And how do you get back to that clean headspace? Because you have to. Mm-hmm. You can't be in the car going into a new race dwelling on that thing that happened 3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm thinking back now to Pierre Gasly just sitting in that car and how heavy you felt watching it the second the car came to a stop. You couldn't see his face, but you could feel it through the camera almost. And then in all those interviews, just that weight. And I'm going to be very interested to see him getting back to the paddock and how it feels, if it still feels heavy or if it feels like there's been a fire lit underneath of I'm not making a mistake again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, because the relationships around them are what matter the most in getting them out of any kind of a slump. Because if they don't trust the car, if they don't trust the team, then they're going to be stuck in it. So it's not completely on the driver to get themselves out of the slump. It's truly a team sport. And everybody has to be able to trust each other. And their physios play a huge role.
That's true.
In speaking the positivity into them. And I will say Mercedes has been very outspoken about the mental health element of the sport and encouraging their people, and not just the drivers, to seek, go to therapy and psychiatrists and all the things, because the truth is we all need it. But for these guys, if they're going to be going out there and potentially putting their lives on the line every time, they need to know with complete assurance that they can trust the people that are behind them.
Mm-hmm.
The connection to the physio is got to be the connection to their ground, their center, because the pressure that is on these drivers constantly, mentally and physically too. We all have to remember that they don't look all that sweaty unless it's Singapore, but these guys are going through corners at 160 miles an hour, pulling 4 Gs, and then hitting the brakes going negative 6 Gs. The training and athleticism of all of the athletes is something that I personally enjoy about this sport. And one of my dreams, you guys ever see them do track runs? I want to do, I want to.
The hot laps?
Yeah. I've always wanted to do that. If you guys could get into a Formula One weekend, what would be the one thing you had to do? Like, you get paddock access. What is the one thing you're just going right towards?
Hot lap.
The hot lap?
I want a hot lap. I want to be...
Get me out there.
but most critically, I want to be in a hot lap with a driver that will actually legitimately take me seriously when I say punch it, don't take it easy, just go. Like, I don't care if this looks like a tiny skinny neck and like I'm gonna go flying all over the place. It's like, I've prepared.
I'll
for
just
this.
brace my elbows against the wall and just go. I'll hold my head.
I'm already doing neck workouts. I have it incorporated like 2-3 times a week.
Christina.
I'm
That's
like,
amazing.
I'm gonna get a hot lap at some point, and I'm gonna be ready. I'm not gonna be a bobblehead for crying out loud.
Christina's like, F1 Academy, I'm coming for you.
Making this happen.
Just show up and sit in a car. That they can't say no. I think that's what you should do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to be in the back seat for Christina's hot lap. I don't want to be in a hot lap. I want to be in the back seat for Christina's hot lap. No, but for real, gosh. If I could pick anything for the weekend, I want to be I want to say, move over Mick Schumacher. I want to be right next to Toto the whole time and hear all the things that they're saying and all the things that they're talking about and just learn all, because that is such a privileged, wonderful position to be in, to get the inner mind and inner workings of everybody around you during a race, during qualifying, during pre-practice. That's where I would want to be. And then I'd be talking to Christina through the radio for her hot lap. I'd be like, go get it, girl.
Losing traction, turn 3, losing traction. Come on now.
Seriously. Christina's going to reach over and grab the wheel and be like, this is how you do it.
I feel like we need to have a counter for how many Top Gun references I make in a single lap. How many can I squeeze in?
That could be a drinking game. It should be a drinking game for the people at home.
Oh, you could get
be a very quick chug.
Easily drunk off of Top Gun references get up.
Yes.
So many, yeah.
Who are your guys' favorite teams? I know that's a very blasé question, but I'm curious to find out.
I feel like I'm becoming an Alpine girl.
Yeah.
Ooh, look at you.
I feel it. Pierre Gasly is the driver that I'm kind of most invested in. Seeing him, one of the first races I had that emotional moment with was his win in Monza. And just him on the podium, just all those emotions. And it was I want to see you succeed. I want to see you do more. And so seeing him being in Alpine away from Red Bull, excited about that. And just Alpine overall at this point, they're in an interesting place. They're one of the only teams that I don't feel like they're fixing problems. It feels like they're at a decent baseline and are actively going to be improving their car. So very interested to see. And these last 3 weekends haven't been their best performance. Like, it's been a challenge, but their car has been good.
Mm-hmm.
So I want them to have a good, clean race from both drivers. Like now, like back. I need the sprint race.
Australia.
I need it to be
like last race.
Yes. So I'm becoming an Alpine girly, I feel. Also, I know French, so I love watching their French content. It brings me joy.
The French content.
The français.
Yeah, I would say it's hard. I don't have any of the teams that I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not anti-Red Bull. I'm not McLaren. I like McLaren. I like Red Bull. I obviously am a Ferrari fan. I feel like I would be in trouble at home if I didn't say that. I am a huge Ferrari fan due to my husband, but Williams just has a really special place in my heart. Since day one, and it could just be their colors that I liked since day one, because I grew up in North Carolina, and their colors are very similar to the colors for the Carolina Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
For any of the listeners that know what American football is, their blue is very similar to the Williams blue. And so it could have felt like home to me, but every step of the way through my Formula One experience, I feel like I just love the Williams brand. I love what they stand for. I love that they're hungry. I love the drivers that they pick. I love that they kind of feed into Mercedes, and I think Toto is awesome. So I think Christian's awesome too. I feel like I want to just say that for the listeners. I'm not anti-Christian Horner. Just because I talk about Toto a lot doesn't mean I don't like Christian.
Oh, no, Christian Horner is somebody that definitely needs to be talked about, because he's played the role of world champion to underdog back to world champions seamlessly. And to make it sound like you're not a top team when you are a top team is a skill. And his tenacity that he has, the aggressiveness, for that final Abu Dhabi in 2021, the FIA, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Red Bull pit, Mercedes didn't. Horner was on top of his team in a way that Mercedes wasn't ready for, timing, whatever it's called. And with Christian Horner and Adrian Newey at the helm of Red Bull, do you guys think that this relationship is going to be as potent as it's going to be in 5 years' time? Because we have to remember, both of them are getting older. Energy levels are going to decrease. Brain capacity is going to decrease. What do you guys think is in the future for Red Bull?
I think the first to leave would be Helmut Marko. If anybody was going to leave first, it would probably be him. But I think you're going to have to drag Christian Horner away. He will be holding on with his nails, dragging him away from that team. I don't see him, or really Adrian Newey. I think they want a dynasty. They want to create this dynasty. And so I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah. For Newey, I think if he's going to retire, I think it's going to be at the end of a development cycle. So he's going to see a project through and then hand off the next generation of the car to somebody else. That's realistically what I think, when he ever retires, that's what I think it's going to be. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh.
He's happy there. He's happy drawing his little cars and designing.
Listen, he's good. I mean, he knows what he's talking about. He thinks in a way that regular people don't think.
He sees the air.
Yes. And I just feel like that is such a talent that is not highlighted often enough. I mean, we talk about Red Bull, and they're so great. And the fact that they had to turn down their engine in the first race of the season, and they still won by like 15 seconds or something. I was like, okay. And they were at 80% capacity. But I feel like Adrian Newey deserves so much credit, and I think they give it to him. But I feel like he needs to be just shouted from the rooftops, like he is the mastermind. You know Taylor Swift's song "Mastermind"? Like Adrian Newey was the inspiration behind that song. No, he wasn't. But don't come for me, Taylor. But in my mind, he was.
You can link McLaren's slide down the grid because of Adrian Newey's departure. He is
Yeah.
instrumental to honestly the sport as a total, because to not have any of the common issues that we're seeing amongst the grid through the other teams with, porpoising or drag, let it be power, he's been able to combine all of that into the package that we're seeing today. Guys, we're at 54 minutes. We only thought
told you.
this is going to be.
It just goes and goes and goes.
I can continue asking you a couple more questions because you guys are just so lovely to speak to. And this has been a very eye-opening conversation for me. And my final question then, I guess, here it is. Your favorite drivers. I know another blasé question, but it's fun to talk about who you think is better than the other.
First of all, thank you for not asking us who we think is the hottest driver. I just want to thank you for not asking us that. You're a real MVP, so thank you.
You're welcome. I try not to bring any uncomfortable questions. Can you imagine? Because I listened to you guys talk about that, and it was like on the cast. They're asking, I forget who they were talking to, but they're asking her what man.
Lissy McIntosh.
Why would you do that? So, who's your favorite driver?
So thank you.
You're welcome.
not because they're attractive.
I think for me, I would go with Pierre Gasly, as I previously mentioned.
Yep.
Excited to see what more he can do. Fernando Alonso. Yeah, and
Yuki-san, yes.
Yuki.
I love Yuki-san. What's your favorite thing about him?
Everything.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I can put a finger on it. Like I genuinely love watching him defend.
Mm-hmm.
Like legitimately, the people that he's kept behind him, like what the heck? There's one race, can't remember which one, but he kept Lewis behind him for like a dozen laps or something like that.
Turkey.
And Lewis.
Turkey. I'm sorry, I cut you off. I was thinking of the race out loud.
I'm happy that we answered the question. That's fantastic. But hearing Lewis basically compliment him afterwards, it was just like, yes, like gold star to Yuki for that. Also, just love listening to him talk and just being like all the other drivers' response to what's the one thing you want in life, being World Drivers' Championship, and Yuki just saying, I want a restaurant.
Yeah.
Don't open a restaurant.
That is much more of an interesting question, like answer to the question. Thank you. But also it's just nice to see and hear about him being well-rounded and just having this other interest and other thing and just kind of like, I'm a person and not just a driver. And here's the little piece of me I'm choosing to give to you.
And we'll all go to your restaurant now.
Oh my
You're
gosh,
welcome,
yes.
Yuki.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a hard question, only because I feel like truly all of them are so deserving of being there, even Lance Stroll.
Yep.
Because they've done the work. They've done the work. You can't just wake up one day and decide to be a Formula One driver. So I really think they all deserve the credit for being there. My favorite is Carlos Sainz.
Yeah.
I am a big Carlos Sainz fan. I love his driving style. He has this personality that is able to make you feel so casual and welcomed. And then he gets on the track and I feel like everybody should be shaking in their boots because he is like, he'll do the things that I feel like nobody else will do. And a lot of times he's running his own race for himself while he's out there. And he's not only having to focus on driving, but he's also having to run his own race strategy a lot of the time. He has that quality that we were talking about that Alonso has, that Max has, where they're able to think through the regulations and the rules and know everything, know every angle they can play to get the most out of their race and the most out of their lap and the most out of their position. And one of my favorite quotes from him was when someone asked him post-race, because he had helped Charles in that race. And that's the other thing. He's willing to be a team player, but he fights for himself. And they asked him, they're like, oh, so Charles, you did Charles a favor and gave him the position or something this race. is he going to return the favor next weekend? And he was like, I don't expect any favors to be given to me. I'm going to win. I'm going to race according to my abilities. And I was like, yes, you're my favorite now. That's amazing. So yeah, I'm a big Carlos fan. I think that his relationship with his father is really, really neat. Full of a lot of respect. And yeah, I really like Alex Albon. I feel like he holds the place in my heart that like Yuki holds for Christina.
Mm-hmm.
His personality and his girlfriend. I love Lily. I'm like, someone asked me the other day, they're like, if you could switch bodies with any Formula One driver for a day, who would you pick? And I said, Alex, so I could talk to Lily all day long. I just want to talk to Lily all day long. Like, she's so cool. And he's so close to his mom. And I think that he is a real class act. So I'm a big fan of him and the grit that he has. He really does have grit. He's one of the few rags to riches drivers on the grid. So I've got a lot of respect for him.
And his pets have an Instagram.
Yes. Ian, who's your favorite?
Well, Lewis, of course, but he's just in another league for me. He's far away. Ocon, because I love Alpine, and he's kind of an underdog. A lot of people don't like him because he's like the Alfa Romeo of drivers to me. You know, I hate to say it, but you just forget that he's there. And what I like about him is he's a rags to riches. He's like Jenson Button. When it was raining, he was racing on slicks that he pulled out of a dumpster. That's one thing that I really like about him. Yuki-san is somebody because I like his progression. I thought I went on record saying he's only in for one season because his rookie year he was quick but unruly, and it's nice to see that he's still got that fire. But the dude over, who was it, K-Mag, overtook him in Saudi Arabia, but he's like screamed on the radio, like, okay, you know, he's still got it. Like,
we all felt it.
And then for anyone else, no, those would be my top two. My heart left when Danny Rick left, and I'm trying to move on from that. But
yeah, he's still there. Let's be real. He's holding Red Bull on his back.
He's
just carrying the entire Red Bull PR strategy. It's titled Daniel Ricciardo. So,
oh my gosh. All of those promos where it was the three of them, Daniel, Checo, and Max, every single time I just kept hearing, I can't believe it's finally you and me, just us and your friend Steve. And Checo just like is stuck in the middle of these two besties. Like, oh, Steve.
I did watch one of their promos, and I remember thinking that like the summary of it was Checo's confused just the whole time. It's Daniel and Max just like bouncing off each other, and Checo confused. That's the whole 15 minutes.
There's definitely a different in personalities between Checo and Danny and how they operate with Max. I think Max does two parts of Max come out. The robotic, I don't want to say not robotic, but the more introverted side of Max comes out when he's with Checo. And then when he's with Danny, he's more extroverted. I mean, the promos of them in 2017-18 are some of my favorite to watch because
so unhinged.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. There's just it's crazy.
It's those two best friends that you're like, I should never take you two out in public, but I guess you guys have to go out in public, so...
That's what I was upset for. Two best friends, Pierre and Yuki-san, too. That's one reason.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They weren't best friends. They were dating.
Yeah.
They were boyfriends.
They were...
What are you talking about?
It was like... the fact that cute. Vegas didn't happen 1 year earlier for them to like go and do a faux or real Vegas wedding.
It might still happen, honestly. It wouldn't surprise me if it still happened.
They could both wear Elvis costumes and shit.
My! I saw a really funny thing the other day that because they do the special hats and stuff for some of the special Grand Prix. So like they did the helmets last year. They're like, what if this year it's like a full Elvis getup? So the drivers like put on like an Elvis wig. It's an Elvis wig that has like the first, second, third, Pirelli on the swoosh in the front. Like, could you imagine how crazy that would be?
That'd be so much and not enough.
Yeah.
Oh, Vegas.
Oh, Vegas.
What do you guys think about that $5 million exclusive? Did you hear about this? Do you know about it? Yeah. If the disparity that Formula One brings is something that I think is going to become a relevant conversation, or it already is and has been ongoing. How do you guys think that Formula One can reconcile the issue if there needs to be reconciliation?
So the twins actually brought up a really good point when we were talking to them about this, because they have the perspective of going to races in Europe and going to races in the States. I only have the perspective of going to the races in the States. I can, and I'm not justifying it, but I can a little bit better understand, listening to their perspective, why it's so much more expensive in the States, because they were saying it's like a show in the States. You go to the race, but there's also like a theme park, and there's also all of these other things that you're getting over the course of the weekend with your ticket. You're getting, I mean, I got to see Ed Sheeran and Green Day last year at the Austin Grand Prix. Like, I would have never been able to see Ed Sheeran otherwise. And Taylor Swift played at the Austin Grand Prix one time. I mean, you're getting...
Jonas Brothers are going to be at Miami.
Yeah, you're getting so much more with your ticket in the States than you are in some of these European races, because it's just the race all weekend.
Yeah.
So I do think that Las Vegas is out of proportion. It's just completely out of proportion. It's become inaccessible to the people that really have a heart for attending the race. And I'm not saying that the people who are going don't have a heart for attending the race, because I'm sure there are plenty of them. But
there's more people who don't have $5 million for a ticket than there are.
Right.
That's all you're saying.
And for the people that are upset that there's a third one in America, I'm like, look, America is huge. It's not easy for me to get, even like I live in the state of Georgia, which if you look at the map, you're like, oh, that's close to Florida. It is still like a 12-hour drive for me to get to the Miami Grand Prix from where I live in Georgia. And I don't even live at the top of Georgia. And so it's having 3 in the States actually geographically makes a lot of sense in my mind. I don't think it needs to cost as much as it does, but I really hope and pray that they keep the Austin Grand Prix tickets tampered, because that to me is like the fans race. Like that's the one that the fans can really go to and afford. Like Miami last year, nobody could afford it. Vegas this year, nobody can afford it. But we can still go to Texas.
I'm going to schlep my way across the continent like 4 or 5 times this year.
Yeah. I'm so excited to see you, Christina. I know we're on Ian's show, but man, I'm so excited to see you in Miami.
Let it out. I want to hear it.
I bought a pair of white runners, and I'm going to start stitching little palm trees and like Miami colors onto it. I'm like making myself little custom runners.
Amazing. I've already started planning my outfits. I'm like, okay, on Wednesday, I'm going to wear this. And race day, I'm going to wear this. I'm so excited.
I'm going to Canada
master plan.
I'm going to Canada, and the only outfit I've planned for myself is probably a tank top. That's it.
Nice.
What styling tips should I be wearing then? Anything checkered flag? Anything around the outside? Anything gravel trap? Okay.
Oh, yeah. We don't have merch yet, but because we're still baby new, but one day we will. Speaking of the Canadian Grand Prix, one of my followers was messaging me because she's in Canada, and she was telling me, I didn't know this, that one of the grandstands at the Canadian Grand Prix is like kid friendly. It's the family grandstand that kids go to for free.
Yeah.
That is so cool, because it's hard. I mean, a race is the race weekends are long. And if you have kids, sometimes it's hard to find babysitting for a whole weekend. You want to bring the kids, but it's expensive to get a ticket for a 5-year-old, or an 8-year-old that might not remember it as well. But I feel like all the tracks should do that.
Common Canada win.
Yeah.
Whoop, whoop.
That's a super good idea. I didn't think I wouldn't even think of doing something like, granted, I don't have kids, so I don't think like that personally. That's why other people do for me.
Yeah. I think it was such a good idea. And if you're trying to inspire the next generation, why not make it accessible for them to come? Yeah. Why make it $5 million to go? Anyway, not that I'd want to bring my kids to Vegas. I feel like that's also not the answer.
It's family friendly.
That's the one race. Anyway.
Oh, yummy.
All right, y'all. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you have anything for me, I do not have anything further for you.
Buck didn't get to say who his favorite driver is.
Buck, who's your favorite driver?
Buck.
You're muted, Buck, by the way.
Here, let me take care of that.
No. Oh,
Now you're not.
okay.
He's going to get a thing. He's going to get the thing.
Oh, is that Lewis?
Yeah, it's a Lewis Hamilton
Little Funko.
Funko Pop. I like a lot of people. I'm a DTS convert. I got sucked in. My girlfriend's brother had it on the TV when we were at his birthday party, and Lewis's story was something I learned about early, and I think his arc is what I've always been drawn to. I used to see him on what was it, Top Gear back in the day when he was much younger, and I knew who he was, and watching the evolution. And we were talking to Ibrahim the other day on our show, and he talked about how he was a fan when he was a kid, and he knew who Lewis Hamilton was, and he came back to F1 and had like, wow, being able to see him still be on this trajectory was inspiring for him. And I'd say the same goes for me. Danny Rick's my other one. He's not a reserve. He's a third driver. So I still consider him the 21st driver on the grid. And I've been holding on hope for him that he would course correct. Because I saw when he left Red Bull, when you watch DTS and you see him make that decision to leave Red Bull, and the logic, the logic was the car is breaking down, and it's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing I can do about this engine failing. So I'm going to leave Red Bull and go to the team that makes those engines. I couldn't understand that logic.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've just been waiting for like that was just one bad decision, fork in the road, and I'm waiting for him to just circle back and rise like a phoenix.
You're not alone.
Fiery
I
honey
think a lot
badger.
of people would like to see Danny Rick on the grid again.
I don't think he's going to be coming. Yeah. I don't think he's coming back. I love Danny Rick. His adaptability. He showed that he doesn't have the adaptability, as much as it pains me to say. He did an incredible, he did an incredible job at Renault. Personally, I don't think he should have left Renault at all. I think that's where his mistake was. Leaving Red Bull in the point in time that he did was a smart idea. And the team with Renault was being built around him. He jumped ship too soon. And when you have a car that has the difficulties with the McLaren, you have to have adaptability. And he just didn't. I mean, he just didn't do it. If Lando didn't do so well too, I think that we would all be more hopeful for Danny's return. But the guy, 7/10, he was taking him out in qualifying sometimes. That's a huge disparity.
Yeah.
Sorry,
and
Buck.
I'm a huge Oscar Piastri fan. So I'm like really excited to see Oscar in it, because I didn't care where he got a seat. I just wanted him in it, because although I will say, and we won't get into it, but I don't think it was right for him to stay at Alpine, right? It was Alpine, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that there were some contract issues there was just some miscommunication, and his manager, Mark Webber, I think handled it really well and respectfully and took care of his driver without causing drama. Of course, inherently it caused drama anyway, but I don't think that they were intending to cause drama. I think that they were trying to act in a respectful, behind the scenes way, and then we're left with no choice but to announce things. But I really like Oscar Piastri. I'm really excited he's on the grid. It would be interesting if he and Danny, not that I'm trying to get rid of Lando, but like he and Danny were on a team together. That would be cool.
Oh my
in
gosh.
like the
That'd
multiverse.
be so Australian.
Yeah.
I know. And Valtteri will be their third driver since he's the honorary Australian.
I just have an image of Valtteri in this little like sidecar with Danny Rick, and they just have their like little sunglasses on. Just, like,
Yes. Amazing. We need to see it. Anyway,
You can see why I reached out to these two about starting a podcast. It has so much selfishly so much more to do with I just want to watch the best podcast ever happen live.
Yeah.
That's really my selfish secret motive is that all the other podcasts I have to wait for. This one I can just schedule it and I get to watch it live.
And it's
my goal is always to make Buck laugh, but like surprise himself with laughter. Like say something that's really out of left field that he then has to go off screen laughing. That's my goal every single episode.
And it's usually accent based. She's got really good accents.
We're not going there. We're not going to go there.
Ibrahim is still upset. He reached out to me and said he was upset he didn't get to get your British accent.
Oh, darn. We'll just have to try it again another time. Most of my accents tend to turn Russian, Ian. That's the I start well and then I turn Russian. I don't know. I have no Russian in me. I'm Croatian. So it's
same ballpark? No. I said
no, like not even close.
He hasn't listened to the holiday special yet, so he hasn't heard
get ready.
Your Russian
My
talents
Toto
yet.
Wolff is so Russian, it's painful.
Well, guys, I have had a sincere pleasure having you all on this show. Thank you. This was a blast.
Thank you for having us. This was a delight. I got to learn more about Christina on your podcast. It was so fun for me.
Oh, always a good time.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys got nothing else, thank you. I also suck at closing off a podcast, so this is just going to be me saying bye, and we'll talk to you later, I hope.
Thanks, Ian. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that's all the time that we have for you tonight. I want to give a big shout out to Caroline, Christina, and Buck of Gravel Trap F1 Podcast for coming onto the show. You guys made this a very special episode. I was blown away by the chemistry between Caroline and Christina after knowing each other for only 2 months. It's as if they've watched Formula One together for a lifetime. If you want to watch this full episode on YouTube, you can at ATO_USF1. This will be published on Saturday. If you want to look at clips from this show and other Around the Outside shows, you can. You can head over to Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ATO_USF1. And when you're looking at our socials, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Once again, thank you all so much for tuning in. We love Formula One. We love sharing it with you. Give yourselves a great day. Merci, obrigado, gracias, dankeschön, and cheers. Bye, y'all.